In the heart of country music's golden years, where heartbreak met whiskey and melodies masked the pain, many legends walked a tightrope between brilliance and destruction. Their music touched millions, but behind the spotlight, some lived every day in a blur of highs, hiding secrets that nearly cost them everything. Today, we reveal 20 legendary country stars who were high almost all the time. Their stories are raw, their struggles real, and their legacies unforgettable. 1. Glen Campbell, the Rhinestone Cowboy's Hidden War. Glen Campbell was a beacon of country pop crossover success. With hits like Wichita Lineman and Rhinestone Cowboy and a beloved TV show that ran for years, he was in every American living room by the early 70s. But behind that clean-cut charm and smooth tenor voice was a man drowning in demons. By the time his career was soaring, Glen was battling alcoholism and substance abuse that strained his marriages and isolated him from those closest to him. Fame had given him the world, but it also gave him the pressure that pushed him to the edge. In 1987, with the help of his fourth wife, Kim, Glen made a brave decision. He quit drinking. But even sobriety didn't erase the damage of his earlier years. In 2003, he was arrested for drunk driving, another fall from grace that shocked longtime fans. Still, Glen fought back. He returned to the stage, connecting with audiences in a more vulnerable way than ever before. Even as Alzheimer's disease stole his memory in later years, his music remained a powerful reminder of resilience. When he passed in 2017 at age 81, it wasn't just the end of a performer. It was the closing of a chapter in American music history. 2. Wayan Jennings, the outlaw who burned bright. Wayan Jennings wasn't just a singer. He was a full-blown movement. The outlaw country icon rejected polished Nashville norms in favor of something raw, untamed, and deeply personal. But that same fire in his music burned within him, fueled by a dangerous cocktail of pills, alcohol, and rebellion. Living with Johnny Cash in the mid-1960s, Jennings started down a path that would define and nearly destroy his life. He once said that Nashville ran on pills, and he wasn't exaggerating. For a time, Wayan was spending up to $1,500 a day on substances. The drugs kept him moving, the alcohol kept him numb, and the fame kept him trapped. In 1977, federal agents raided his recording studio, accusing him of possession with intent to distribute. Thanks to quick thinking and a conveniently missing search warrant, Wayan avoided jail. But the scare wasn't enough to make him stop. Years of hard living caught up with him. Diabetes, weight issues, and exhaustion dulled his spark. In debt and physically worn down, Jennings was forced to tour relentlessly just to stay afloat. But it wasn't enough. On February 13, 2002, the outlaw passed away in his sleep, leaving behind a trail of music that still inspires, but also a cautionary tale of how even legends can be consumed by their own fire. 3. George Jones, the voice that couldn't escape the bottle. George Jones was more than a country singer. He was the voice of country music. With over 160 charting songs and a delivery so emotional it could break your heart in a single verse, Jones earned the nickname the Rolls-Royce of country music. But that luxury came at a devastating personal cost. From the 1950s through the 1980s, George's life spiraled through the depths of addiction. His drinking became legendary, and not in a good way. He missed shows so frequently that he was dubbed No-Show Jones. His marriage to Tammy Wynette, a country queen in her own right, collapsed under the weight of his unpredictable, often dangerous behavior. Alcohol wasn't the only demon. Substances entered the picture, leading to arrests, health breakdowns, and public embarrassments. By the late 70s, it seemed like the music would stop. But it didn't. Enter Nancy Sepulvado, George's fourth wife, and the woman who helped him find the strength to get clean. Through her love and unwavering support, Jones sobered up, faced his past, and began to rebuild. In his later years, he performed with a renewed sense of purpose, his voice now carrying the weight of every scar. When George Jones died in 2013, it wasn't the legacy of an addict that was remembered. It was the voice, the pain, the survival, and the soul of country music. 4. Merle Haggard, the outlaw poet who couldn't outrun the smoke. Merle Haggard's rise from ex-convict to country royalty is the stuff of legends. Born into poverty, locked up at San Quentin, and hardened by life's harshest blows, Merle didn't just sing about pain, he lived it. With 38 #1 hits, His voice gave blue-collar America a soul. But while his lyrics reached the heavens, his personal demons kept him grounded in darkness. By the 1980s, Haggard was living a fast life that blurred into oblivion. He famously admitted to spending $2,000 on substances during one 5-month stretch of wild partying. He started smoking at 41, not cigarettes, but something stronger, and once he started, he never really stopped. In time, the drugs took their toll. Though he managed to quit hard substances and gave up cigarettes for a while, old habits crept back in. A Rolling Stone interview in 2009 revealed Merle was still smoking regularly. It was clear the high life never truly let go of him. His personal life mirrored the chaos. Married 5 times, with 6 children, Merle wrestled with guilt, memory, and the lingering haze of addiction. Yet, through it all, he kept writing. His songs remained brutally honest, revealing not just a man, but a wounded soul trying to heal. When Merle Haggard died on his 79th birthday in 2016, fans mourned not just a voice, but a symbol of resilience, contradiction, and raw, unfiltered truth. 5. Randy Travis, the angelic voice with a dark shadow. Randy Travis was the golden boy of the neo-traditionalist country movement. With a voice like velvet and the breakout success of Storms of Life, he quickly became a household name in the 1980s. Songs like Forever and Ever, Amen and I Told You So brought him awards, adoration, and a pristine public image. But behind that clean-cut Southern charm was a man grappling with an addiction that nearly cost him everything. Though he had dabbled with substances in his youth, it was alcohol that followed Randy into adulthood. As the years went on, especially into the 2000s, his personal struggles grew harder to hide. Fans were stunned when he was arrested for public intoxication, and later for driving under the influence. For a man known for gospel songs and wholesome values, it was a fall from grace that sent shockwaves through the country music community. But Randy didn't give up. He faced his demons and fought to rebuild not just his career, but his life. Then in 2013, tragedy struck again. A massive stroke left him with severe speech and mobility impairments, seemingly ending his singing career for good. Yet, even in silence, Randy Travis remains a symbol of perseverance. He continues to inspire generations of artists, not just with his voice, but with his story of fall, redemption, and unbreakable faith. 6. Ira Louven, the harmony genius, torn apart by demons. Ira Louven's high tenor voice helped shape the sound of American country, bluegrass, and gospel music. Alongside his brother Charlie, the Louven brothers crafted haunting harmonies that would later influence everyone from the Byrds to Emmylou Harris. But Ira's angelic voice belied a life that was anything but heavenly. Behind the stage persona was a man unraveling. Ira battled violent outbursts, deep-seated anger, and a severe addiction to alcohol. His drinking led to countless legal issues and erratic behavior that pushed everyone, including Charlie, to the brink. Charlie's memoir, Satan is Real, doesn't sugarcoat the truth. Ira was brilliant, yes, but he was also broken. His addiction not only wrecked his relationships, but torched the trust that held their music together. After years of tension, Charlie made the heartbreaking decision to end their duo in 1963, but the damage had already been done. Just 2 years later, Ira died in a car crash while facing an outstanding DUI warrant. His life ended as chaotically as it had been lived. And though the Louven brothers' music remains revered, it's impossible to ignore the shadow cast by Ira's tragic spiral. 7. Tammy Wynette, the first lady of country and her painful secrets. Tammy Wynette was more than a singer. She was a symbol. With Stand By Your Man, she became the voice of devotion and heartbreak, standing tall in a genre long dominated by men. Her voice carried strength, but her life told a story of silent suffering. After a hysterectomy in 1970, Tammy endured years of chronic pain and complications. To cope, she turned to prescription painkillers and soon became dependent. Her addiction deepened behind the scenes, where road crew members were reportedly tasked with giving her injections just to get her on stage. The public never saw the extent of her agony. But it wasn't just her health unraveling. Her personal life was equally turbulent. In 1978, she reported a chilling kidnapping, claiming she was abducted at gunpoint and left beaten. The case was never fully resolved, leaving behind haunting speculation. Shortly after, her home was broken into, and a suspicious fire broke out, following a cut phone line. In 1986, Tammy entered the Betty Ford Center to confront her growing addiction. But the wounds, physical and emotional, never fully healed. She remained a beloved icon, but also a fragile one, haunted by the cost of keeping up appearances in a world that demanded perfection. Tammy Wynette lived in the spotlight, but her real battles raged quietly behind it. And when she passed in 1998, the music world lost not just a star, but one of its most complex and courageous voices. 8. Johnny Paycheck, the rebel who paid the price. Johnny Paycheck made a name for himself with grit, swagger, and the working man anthem, "Take this job and shove it." He was a proud member of the outlaw country movement, with a voice that dripped rebellion and a stage presence that demanded attention. But his defiance extended far beyond the microphone, and it came with a heavy cost. In the 1980s, Johnny's life took a dark turn. Addiction fueled erratic behavior, leading to multiple legal troubles. One barroom incident ended with him shooting a man, an act he claimed was self-defense. Still, it led to nearly 2 years in prison. And that wasn't the only brush with the law. Earlier, he had faced accusations involving a minor, resulting in a misdemeanor plea and financial settlement. As his legal issues mounted, his health began to crumble under the weight of alcohol and substance use. Yet, even after prison, Johnny tried to find his footing again. He returned to the stage, determined to reclaim his voice. But his body was no longer able to keep up. Emphysema and asthma slowed him down and eventually forced him to stop performing altogether. When he passed in 2003 at the age of 64, it was the end of a complicated life, one filled with raw talent, fierce defiance, and a battle that never quite ended. Johnny Paycheck didn't just sing for the working man, he lived the hard life they knew too well. 9. Billy Joe Shaver, the poet of pain and redemption. Billy Joe Shaver's music was raw, truthful, and unapologetically real. Revered by legends like Willie Nelson and Bob Dylan, he was the kind of songwriter who could make you feel every scar he carried. But behind his poetic lyrics was a life ravaged by addiction and heartache. Shaver openly admitted to long battles with alcohol and substance abuse, years of hard partying that pushed him to the brink. At one point, the pain became so overwhelming that he considered ending his own life. He felt trapped, suffocated by a lifestyle he once thought was part of the music. Still, he survived. He made a brave decision to quit, determined to reclaim the life he nearly lost. But sobriety didn't erase the shadows. The scars remained, and the temptation lingered. Shaver's songs continued to echo the chaos he once lived through, each lyric another chapter in his unfinished struggle. Through it all, he remained a symbol of resilience. His words gave voice to broken people, and his story proved that healing, though hard, was possible. Billy Joe Shaver wasn't just an outlaw, he was a survivor, and every note he sang carried the weight of a man who had seen the edge and turned back. 10. Roger Miller, the king of the road with nowhere to run. Roger Miller was a genius of wit and wordplay. With hits like King of the Road and Dang Me, he brought humor and novelty to country music in a way no one else could. But behind the jokes and charm was a man quietly falling apart. Miller's addictions began after his service in the U.S. Army, when he turned to amphetamines and alcohol, habits that would haunt him for years. His use was so embedded in his lifestyle that he once joked about smoking the scraps of paper he wrote his lyrics on. But the truth was darker. The drugs numbed his pain, and the bottle became a crutch. His personal life suffered deeply. 2 marriages collapsed under the weight of his addiction, and his once sparkling stage persona became increasingly erratic. There were times he walked off stage mid-performance, disoriented and lost. Eventually, Miller sought help. He entered rehab and made genuine efforts to turn his life around. But time wasn't on his side. In 1992, at the age of 56, Roger Miller passed away from lung and throat cancer, damage accelerated by a lifetime of chain smoking and self-destructive habits. His brilliance was undeniable, his talent unmatched, but his life stood as a painful reminder. Even the funniest man in the room can be battling the deepest sorrow. 11. Hank Williams, the haunted father of country music. Hank Williams wasn't just a pioneer. He was the foundation on which modern country music was built. With only 29 years on this earth, he scored 12 #1 hits and became a legend before most people had even heard of rock and roll. But behind his haunting voice and timeless songs lay unbearable pain. Born with spina bifida occulta, a painful spinal condition, Hank lived in constant physical agony. To cope, he turned to alcohol, then morphine and prescription pills. The substances dulled the pain but destroyed everything else: his marriage, his reputation, and ultimately his life. His performances became increasingly unreliable. The Grand Ole Opry, the very institution that had crowned him, eventually banned him for his inability to stay sober. He was spiraling fast. On New Year's Day 1953, Hank Williams died in the backseat of a car on the way to a concert. The official cause was heart failure, but the deeper truth was addiction. He died alone, at the peak of his fame, carrying the weight of pain that never let him rest. Yet, despite his short life, Hank's legacy endures. Every country singer since has walked a road he paved, one lined with brilliance, tragedy, and the price of greatness. 12. Hank Williams Jr., rebuilding from the wreckage of a legend. Being the son of Hank Williams meant carrying a name soaked in myth and in pain. From childhood, Hank Williams Jr. was groomed to be the heir to his father's legacy, performing his songs and mimicking his style on national television. But inside, young Hank Jr. was drowning under expectations he never asked for. By his early 20s, he was already lost in addiction and identity crisis. In 1974, overwhelmed by the pressure, he attempted suicide. A year later, fate intervened, brutally. While climbing in Montana, Hank Jr. fell nearly 500 feet down a mountain, shattering his face and nearly losing his life. But from the wreckage came rebirth. Emerging from reconstructive surgery and a grueling recovery, Hank Jr. abandoned his father's shadow and forged his own outlaw sound. It was raw, loud, rebellious, and entirely his. He spoke openly about his battles with alcohol, depression, and the curse of legacy, turning that pain into power on stage. Through music, nature, and family, he found healing. And though the scars, both physical and emotional, remain, Hank Williams Jr. stands today not just as a survivor, but as a man who carved his own name into country music history. 13. Charlie Rich, the silver fox who burned from within. Charlie Rich had the kind of voice that melted hearts, smooth, soulful, and sophisticated. Dubbed the Silver Fox, he blended jazz, blues, and country into a sound uniquely his own. But behind the suave exterior was a man slowly unraveling under the weight of addiction. As his fame soared in the 1970s, so did his drinking. What began as a way to soothe nerves became a full-fledged dependency. The most infamous moment came in 1975, during the Country Music Association Awards. Drunk on stage, Rich pulled out a lighter and set fire to the envelope, announcing John Denver as Entertainer of the Year. A bizarre and shocking act that symbolized a career spiraling out of control. Alcoholism ran deep in his family. His father had suffered the same affliction, and Charlie seemed caught in a cycle he couldn't escape. Despite his immense talent, the drinking disrupted his relationships, his performances, and eventually his health. In 1995, Charlie Rich died from a blood clot at the age of 62. Though officially unrelated, many believe years of heavy drinking contributed to his early decline. Yet even in death, his voice lived on. His name honored with a place in the Memphis Music Hall of Fame and ranked by Rolling Stone as one of the greatest singers of all time. Charlie Rich was proof that talent can't always outrun trauma, but it can still leave something beautiful behind. 14. Jerry Lee Lewis, rock's wildest flame that never went out. Jerry Lee Lewis wasn't just a performer, he was a storm. With fire in his fingers and chaos in his veins, the killer lit up stages with hits like Great Balls of Fire and Whole Lotta Shakin' Going On. But his offstage life was just as explosive and often destructive. Addicted to alcohol and painkillers for much of his life, Jerry Lee was in and out of treatment facilities, including the famed Betty Ford Clinic. His addictions fueled erratic behavior, legal troubles, and a reputation that teetered between genius and scandal. Despite this, his music endured. From Memphis to international stardom, Lewis pushed boundaries, mixing rock, country, and gospel into something wild and wholly original. Yet his personal life was often in turmoil, marked by broken marriages, brushes with the law, and near-death health scares. In 2019, he suffered a minor stroke, a chilling reminder that even legends are mortal. Then, in 2022, Jerry Lee Lewis passed away at 87. Ironically, news of his death was falsely reported 2 days before it actually happened, a fitting final twist for a man whose life had always defied order. Jerry Lee Lewis burned hot, lived fast, and left a legacy that refuses to fade. 15. Spade Coulie, from Western swing star to fallen monster. Spade Coulie once reigned as the king of Western swing, a charismatic bandleader with movie star looks and a television presence that lit up screens in the 1940s and 50s. But behind the polished image was a man descending into darkness, one whose story turned from fame to horror. Coulie's career began to slip in the late 1950s. As his spotlight dimmed, he spiraled into alcoholism and heavy prescription drug use. At home, his marriage to singer Ella Mae Evans grew increasingly toxic. Paranoia, accusations of infidelity, and violent rages turned their lives into a powder keg. In 1961, the unthinkable happened. During a fit of rage, Spade brutally attacked and killed his wife in front of their teenage daughter. The shocking crime destroyed any remnants of his once glamorous image. He was sentenced to life in prison. Yet even behind bars, Coulie's life was far from over. Friends in the entertainment industry lobbied for his early release, and a governor eventually granted it. But just before he was to be freed, Spade Coulie died of natural causes, his second act never granted, and his name forever tainted. His music may have brought joy, but his legacy is stained by the darkest of human failures. 16. Kris Kristofferson, the poet who nearly lost himself. Kris Kristofferson is country music's philosopher, a Rhodes Scholar turned outlaw who penned anthems like Me and Bobby McGee and Sunday Morning Coming Down. His lyrics bled honesty, often reflecting the internal wars he was quietly fighting. At the peak of his fame in the 1970s, Kristofferson was living hard. Alcohol and substances became part of the lifestyle, fueled by long nights, creative pressure, and emotional turmoil. The weight of success nearly crushed him until an unexpected wake-up call changed everything. After watching the death scene in A Star is Born, a film that eerily mirrored his own struggles, Kris saw his future if he didn't stop. He chose sobriety, not just for himself, but for his family. It marked a turning point. With the support of his third wife, Lisa Myers, he rebuilt a quieter life, one filled with music, family, and reflection. He raised 8 children, split time between Hawaii and Malibu, and focused on being present. Kristofferson's story isn't one of total destruction, it's one of redemption. A reminder that even when addiction whispers in your ear, you still have the power to rewrite the ending. 17. Keith Whitley, a voice silenced too soon. Keith Whitley had a voice that could stop time, aching, tender, and timeless. From his bluegrass roots to his breakout Nashville hits like Don't Close Your Eyes and When You Say Nothing at All, he seemed destined for country music immortality. But behind that soulful delivery was a man locked in a losing battle with the bottle. Whitley struggled with alcohol from a young age. Despite growing fame, marriage to fellow artist Lori Morgan, and rising chart success, the demons never let go. Friends and family watched as he tried to find stability, but the fight was relentless. On May 9, 1989, just as he was preparing for a new album release, Keith Whitley was found dead from alcohol poisoning. He was only 34 years old. His death shattered the country music world. He had only just begun to scratch the surface of his potential. Posthumous hits like I'm Over You and his 2022 induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame cemented his legacy. But they couldn't erase the tragedy of what was lost. Keith Whitley left behind a sound that still breaks hearts and a cautionary tale of how even the brightest stars can burn out far too soon. 18. Gary Stewart, the king of honky-tonk heartbreak. Gary Stewart wasn't like anyone else in country music. With a wailing vibrato and a sound that blended outlaw country with southern rock, he earned the title the king of honky-tonk. Hits like She's Actin' Single, I'm Drinkin' Doubles captured a rawness few dared to express. But behind the songs of heartbreak was a man suffering his own. In the 1980s, Gary spiraled into deep addiction, fueled by alcohol, pills, and unresolved trauma. His son's tragic death in 1988 was a blow he never truly recovered from. A car accident left him injured, and his marriage went through periods of separation, deepening his emotional wounds. Despite moments of sobriety and bursts of musical comeback, like his 1988 album Brand New and a final live recording, Gary's demons never fully retreated. In 2003, just weeks after his wife passed away, Stewart died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. His music lives on, soaked in sorrow and honesty. But the man behind it remained trapped in grief until the very end. 19. David Allan Coe, the outlaw who wrote his own rules. David Allan Coe is a name whispered with both reverence and controversy. A drifter turned songwriter, he brought a raw, rebellious energy to country music with songs like You Never Even Called Me by My Name and The Ride. But his outlaw persona wasn't just an act, it was rooted in a past filled with darkness. Coe spent his early life in reform schools and prison. Music became his salvation, but addiction and legal troubles continued to haunt him. His battles with substances mirrored the stories he told, gritty, angry, and laced with pain. While his lyrics drew fans who saw themselves in his struggles, Coe often clashed with the industry, his defiant image too rough for mainstream acceptance. He was a storyteller, yes, but also a man deeply shaped by the consequences of his choices. Despite everything, David Allan Coe's influence remains. He gave voice to the voiceless and reminded Nashville that not all country stories end neatly wrapped in redemption. 20. Mindy McCriedi, a star devoured by the spotlight. Mindy McCriedi burst onto the scene in the mid-1990s like a firework, bright, bold, and unforgettable. Her debut album 10,000 Angels went double platinum, and for a moment, it looked like a new queen of country had arrived. But behind the soaring vocals was a young woman unraveling under pressure, pain, and addiction. As her fame grew, so did the chaos. Alcohol and prescription pills became a dangerous coping mechanism. Her personal life spiraled into headlines, custody battles, arrests, and public breakdowns. Appearing on Celebrity Rehab exposed just how deep the wounds ran. Her final album, I'm Still Here, felt like a desperate plea, one last effort to remind the world that she was still fighting. But the blows kept coming. After her boyfriend's tragic suicide, Mindy was ordered back to rehab. She was released after just one day, despite concerns. On February 17, 2013, Mindy McCriedi took her own life at just 37 years old, leaving behind 2 young children and a trail of unanswered questions. Hers is a story of unimaginable talent, swallowed by inner torment, and a haunting reminder of how fame can amplify the very pain it tries to hide.